The autumn air in Nashville carried a crisp coolness that evening, the kind that made people walk a little faster down Broadway Street, their hands buried deep in their pockets. The neon lights of the honky-tonks reflected off the wet pavement from an earlier rain, creating a kaleidoscope of colors that danced beneath the feet of tourists and locals alike. Music poured out from every doorway, a symphony of guitars, fiddles, and hopeful voices, all vying for attention in Music City. But Tyler Bennett wasn't thinking about any of that as he pushed through the heavy oak door of the Harvest Table, a upscale farm-to-table restaurant tucked away on a quieter side street, away from the chaos of downtown. His mind was occupied with numbers, always numbers. The electricity bill was due in 3 days. Emily's university application fee needed to be paid by Friday, and his mother's prescription refill was going to cost more than he'd anticipated. At 28 years old, Tyler had the kind of face that looked older than his years, marked by responsibility and sleepless nights. His dark brown hair was neatly combed back, and his green eyes, though tired, still held a flicker of something that hadn't quite died. He wore the restaurant's standard uniform, black slacks, a crisp white button-down shirt, and a burgundy apron tied around his waist. "You're cutting it close, Bennett," called out James Rodriguez, the head chef, as Tyler hurried past the kitchen. James was a stocky man in his 50s, with a thick mustache and hands that moved with practiced precision as he plated a beautiful dish of pan-seared salmon. I know. Mom had a rough morning. Took longer to get her settled," Tyler replied, grabbing his order pad and pen from the small cubby that held his belongings. James's expression softened. He'd known Tyler for 3 years now, had watched the young man transform from a vibrant, hopeful person into someone who carried the world on his shoulders. "How's Rebecca doing?" "Same. Some days are better than others." Tyler didn't elaborate. He didn't need to. Everyone at the Harvest Table knew his story. How his father, David Bennett, had died 14 months ago in a construction accident when scaffolding collapsed at a job site downtown. How his mother had fallen into a deep depression that manifested in physical ailments, her grief literally making her sick. How his 19-year-old sister Emily was desperately trying to get into Vanderbilt University to study medicine, but the family could barely afford community college, let alone a prestigious institution. And everyone knew that Tyler had once been someone different. Before all of this, he'd been a regular performer at the Bluebird Cafe, that legendary venue where countless country stars had been discovered. He'd had a growing following, a unique voice that critics said reminded them of a young Keith Whitley. And he'd been on the verge of signing with a small independent label. Then everything collapsed, just like that scaffolding. Table 7 just sat down. "Looks like a quiet night," said Jennifer Walsh, a fellow server and single mother of 2 who had become something of a work friend to Tyler. She was in her mid-30s, with auburn hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, and a no-nonsense demeanor that Tyler appreciated. "Quiet is good. Quiet means I can think," Tyler said, managing a small smile. "Thinking is overrated. It's what gets us in trouble," Jennifer replied with a wink before heading to the kitchen to pick up an order. The Harvest Table was the kind of restaurant that catered to Nashville's growing foodie scene. Exposed brick walls were decorated with vintage photographs of Tennessee farms and old agricultural equipment. Edison bulbs hung from the ceiling on long cords, casting a warm, amber glow over the wooden tables and chairs. The bar, made from reclaimed barnwood, stretched along one wall, its shelves lined with top-shelf whiskey and local craft beers. Tyler approached Table 7, his professional smile firmly in place. An older couple sat there, probably in their 60s, dressed nicely but not ostentatiously. The man wore a simple button-down shirt and jeans, while the woman had on an elegant navy dress and a delicate silver necklace. Good evening, folks. Welcome to the Harvest Table. My name's Tyler, and I'll be taking care of you tonight. Can I start you off with something to drink? The man looked up, and Tyler noticed he had kind eyes, crow's feet deepening as he smiled. There was something familiar about him, but Tyler couldn't quite place it. In Nashville, you saw so many people in the music industry that after a while, everyone started to look vaguely familiar. "I'll have a maker's mark. Neat," the man said in a smooth, unhurried voice. "And I'll take a glass of your house Chardonnay," the woman added warmly. "Excellent choices. I'll be right back with those." As Tyler walked away, he had no idea that the man at table 7 was George Strait, one of the most legendary figures in country music history. George had specifically chosen this restaurant because it was off the beaten path, a place where he and his wife Norma could enjoy a quiet dinner without being constantly interrupted. After decades in the spotlight, he'd learned where to go to find peace. The evening progressed as evenings at the Harvest Table usually did. Tyler moved between his tables with practiced efficiency, taking orders, delivering food, refilling drinks, and making small talk when appropriate. He'd become good at reading people, knowing when they wanted to chat and when they preferred to be left alone. The couple at table 7 seemed to fall into the latter category, so he gave them space, checking in only when necessary. Around 8:30, there was a lull in activity. Most of the dinner rush had finished their meals, and the restaurant had settled into that comfortable post-dinner atmosphere. Soft instrumental music played through the speakers, barely audible beneath the gentle murmur of conversation. Tyler was clearing dishes from table 12 when it happened. Without thinking, without even realizing he was doing it, he began to hum. It was an old habit, one from his performing days that occasionally resurfaced when his mind wandered. The melody was "Amarillo by Morning," one of George Strait's most beloved songs, though Tyler had no idea who was sitting just 15 feet away. The humming turned into soft singing, his voice barely above a whisper as he balanced the plates in his hands. "Amarillo by morning, up from San Antone. Everything that I got is just what I've got on." His voice was pure and authentic, carrying that rare quality that can't be taught or manufactured. It was the sound of genuine emotion, of someone who understood every word they were singing because they'd lived it. There was a slight rasp to it, a weathered quality that added depth and made each note feel earned. At table 7, George Strait's hand froze halfway to his glass of whiskey. His eyes widened slightly, and he turned his head toward the young waiter, who was now walking toward the kitchen, still singing softly, completely unaware that he had an audience. "Did you hear that?" George whispered to Norma, his voice carrying a note of surprise and excitement that she hadn't heard in years. Norma smiled knowingly. After more than 5 decades of marriage, she knew that look on her husband's face. It was the same expression he'd had when he'd first heard artists like Chris Stapleton or Miranda Lambert. That recognition of genuine talent. "I heard it. That's something special. That's not just something. That's..." George trailed off, searching for the right word. "That's the real thing." Tyler returned from the kitchen and continued his rounds, completely oblivious to the attention he'd attracted. He checked on a young couple celebrating an anniversary, refilled water glasses at a table of businessmen discussing a deal, and brought dessert menus to a family with 2 children who were surprisingly well-behaved. When he approached table 7 to check if they needed anything else, George looked up at him with renewed interest. "That was quite the voice we heard a few minutes ago." Tyler felt his cheeks flush with embarrassment. "Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize I was singing out loud. That's completely unprofessional. It won't happen again." "Don't apologize," George said quickly, his tone gentle but firm. "You've got a gift there, son. Do you perform?" Tyler's expression shifted, a shadow passing over his face. "Used to. Not anymore." "Why not?" It was Norma who asked, her voice soft and genuinely curious. Tyler hesitated, the practiced smile faltering. "Life got in the way, ma'am. Some dreams have to wait." He caught himself, remembering where he was. "Can I get you folks anything else? Coffee? Dessert?" George exchanged a glance with Norma, who gave him a slight nod. "We'll take 2 coffees and the pecan pie to share, if you don't mind." "Absolutely. I'll have that right out for you." As Tyler walked away, George pulled out his phone and sent a quick text message. Norma raised an eyebrow. "What are you planning, George Harvey Strait?" "Just making a phone call to an old friend," he replied with a mysterious smile. In the kitchen, Tyler leaned against the wall for a moment, allowing himself a brief respite. His feet ached, his lower back was tight, and he still had another hour before his shift ended. Then it would be home to check on his mother, help Emily with her college essays, and maybe, if he was lucky, get 5 hours of sleep before starting all over again. "You okay?" James asked, noticing Tyler's exhausted posture. "Yeah, just tired." "You're always tired, kid. When's the last time you did something for yourself?" Tyler laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Can't remember. Probably around the same time I could afford to." James shook his head, concern evident in his weathered features. "Your dad wouldn't want you living like this, Tyler. David would want you to have a life. My dad would want me to take care of Mom and Emily. That's what I'm doing." Tyler's voice was firm, brooking no argument. He prepared the coffee and plated the pecan pie with the skill of someone who'd done it 1,000 times, adding a small scoop of vanilla ice cream and a drizzle of caramel sauce. When he delivered the dessert to table 7, George was off his phone and watching Tyler with an intensity that would have made the young man uncomfortable if he'd noticed it. But Tyler was too focused on doing his job, too wrapped up in his own thoughts and worries to see the way the older man's eyes followed him. "Here you are. 2 coffees and our pecan pie. This is made fresh daily by our pastry chef, Linda Chen. She's been perfecting this recipe for 10 years. "Looks wonderful," Norma said warmly. "Thank you." As Tyler turned to leave, George spoke up again. "Son, can I ask you something?" Tyler paused and turned back. "Of course, sir. What's your name?" "Tyler. Tyler Bennett." "Tyler Bennett," George repeated, as if testing how it sounded. "That's a good name, a strong name." He extended his hand. "I'm George, and this is my wife Norma." Tyler shook his hand, noting the firm grip and the calluses that spoke of years of playing guitar. "Nice to meet you both. You folks visiting Nashville, or do you live here?" "We're in town for a few days. Business mostly," George answered vaguely. "But we always make time for good food and good company." Tyler nodded politely and excused himself to attend to his other tables. The rest of the evening passed without incident, though he couldn't shake the feeling that something was different, that the air in the restaurant had shifted in some indefinable way. At 9:45, as Tyler was wiping down table 9, Jennifer approached him with a strange expression on her face. "Tyler, that couple at 7 wants to speak with you before they leave. They specifically asked for you." "Did I do something wrong? Was the service not good?" "No, nothing like that. They want to talk to you." "And Tyler?" Jennifer paused, biting her lip. "Do you know who that is?" "Should I?" Jennifer looked at him like he'd grown a second head. "That's George Strait. The king of country himself is sitting at table 7 in our restaurant, and you sang one of his songs right in front of him." The world seemed to tilt slightly. Tyler gripped the back of a chair to steady himself. That's George Strait?" "Yes. How did you not recognize him?" "I don't know. I wasn't looking. I was just working. Tyler felt panic rising in his chest. George Strait, the man who'd sold over 100 million records worldwide, the man who'd defined country music for generations. and Tyler had sung his song, badly probably, while clearing dishes like an amateur. "Go talk to him." "He's waiting," Jennifer urged, giving him a small push. Tyler approached table 7 on unsteady legs. George and Norma had finished their dessert and were preparing to leave. But they looked up as he arrived, both wearing friendly expressions. "Mr. Strait, I'm so sorry. I didn't recognize you, and I sang your song, which must have seemed incredibly presumptuous, and—" George held up a hand, stopping Tyler's nervous rambling. "Please, call me George. And you have nothing to apologize for. In fact, I wanted to tell you that you have one of the most authentic voices I've heard in years. It's rare to hear someone who sings from a place of truth." Tyler didn't know what to say. This couldn't be real. George Strait was complimenting his singing. Norma stood and gently touched Tyler's arm. "My husband has been in this business for over 40 years. He knows talent when he hears it. And you, young man, have something special. Thank you. That means more than you could possibly know. I used to perform, actually, at the Bluebird and some other venues around town. But that was before." He stopped himself, not wanting to burden these kind strangers with his life story. "Before what?" George asked gently. Tyler looked down at his feet. "Before life had other plans for me." George was quiet for a moment, then reached into his wallet and pulled out a business card. "Tyler, I'm going to give you something, and I want you to think very carefully about it. This is the number for my manager, Jerry Davis. I'm going to call him tomorrow and tell him about you. I'd like you to come to my studio 3 days from now, on Thursday at 2 in the afternoon. The address is on the back of this card." Tyler took the card with shaking hands. "Come to your studio? Why?" "Because I want to hear you sing properly, not while you're balancing plates. And because I think you might have what it takes to do something with that voice of yours. No promises, no guarantees. Just a chance to be heard by people who can help." I don't know what to say. This is incredible. But I work Thursday afternoons, and I can't afford to lose the hours. And my mother needs— "Tyler," George interrupted, his voice kind but firm. "Sometimes we have to take risks for the things that matter. Sometimes we have to bet on ourselves, even when it's scary. Especially when it's scary." Norma added, "We're not trying to pressure you, dear. But opportunities like this don't come along often. Think about it. Pray about it, if that's your way. And if you decide to come, we'll be there waiting for you." George placed $300 on the table as payment for a meal that had cost $48. "Keep the change, Tyler. And whatever you decide, thank you for reminding me tonight why I fell in love with music in the first place. You sing like you've got something to say, and that's becoming rare in this town." As the couple walked toward the exit, Tyler stood frozen, the business card clutched in his hand, his mind reeling. Jennifer rushed over the moment they were gone. "What did he say? What happened?" Tyler looked at her, his eyes wide with disbelief. "He wants me to come to his studio. He thinks I have talent." "Of course you have talent, you idiot. We've all been telling you that for years." Jennifer grabbed his shoulders and shook him slightly. "You're going, right? Please tell me you're going." "I don't know. I can't just take an afternoon off. What about my tables? What about the money? What about your life, Tyler?" Jennifer's voice rose slightly. "What about your dreams? What about everything you gave up? This is George Strait offering you a chance. You don't say no to that." James emerged from the kitchen, having heard the commotion. "What's going on?" When Jennifer explained, James wiped his hands on his apron and looked at Tyler seriously. "If you don't go to that studio on Thursday, I'm personally going to kick your ass. Your dad would want you to go. Your mom would want you to go. Hell, even Emily would want you to go. But "No buts," James cut him off. "We'll cover your shift. We'll make it work. You take this chance, Tyler. You take it, and you don't look back." Tyler looked down at the business card again, at George Strait's name embossed in elegant letters. 3 days. He had 3 days to figure out if he had the courage to walk back into the world of music that had once meant everything to him. 3 days to decide if he could risk hoping again. That night, as Tyler drove his old Honda Civic through the quiet streets of Nashville toward the modest apartment he shared with his mother and sister, he kept glancing at the business card on his passenger seat. The streetlights flickered past, and in the distance, the downtown skyline glowed against the dark sky. When he arrived home, he found his mother still awake, sitting in her recliner in the dim living room, a crocheted blanket across her lap. Rebecca Bennett had once been a vibrant woman with a quick smile and boundless energy. Now, at 54, she looked much older. Her dark hair streaked heavily with gray, her face drawn and tired. "You're home late," she said softly. "Just the usual rush. How are you feeling?" Tyler set his keys on the small table by the door and sat on the couch across from her. "Better today. Less pain. Emily made dinner. She left you a plate in the fridge." "Where is she?" "In her room, working on those college essays. She's so stressed about them." Rebecca looked at her son with concern. "You look like something's on your mind." Tyler hesitated, then pulled out the business card. "Something happened at work tonight, Mom. Something I'm having trouble believing is real." He told her the entire story, watching her face as he spoke. When he finished, Rebecca was quiet for a long moment, her fingers absently working the edge of her blanket. "Your father loved listening to you sing," she finally said, her voice thick with emotion. "He used to come home from work, exhausted and covered in dust, and he'd sit in that kitchen and listen to you practice for hours. He told me once that he knew you were destined for something bigger than Nashville. He said you had the kind of talent that comes along once in a generation." Tears pricked at Tyler's eyes. "Dad said that?" "Many times, and I believe he was right." Rebecca leaned forward, reaching for her son's hand. "Tyler, I know you've given up so much for Emily and me. I know you've sacrificed your dreams to take care of us, and while I'm grateful, more grateful than I can ever express, I don't want you to give up your entire life for us. You're not a burden, Mom. Neither is Emily. You're my family. And family means wanting what's best for each other. This is what's best for you. You have to go to that studio. You have to take this chance." Her grip tightened on his hand. "Promise me you'll go." "Mom, promise me," Tyler David Bennett. "Promise me right now." Tyler felt something break open inside his chest, a dam of emotion he'd been holding back for 14 months. "Okay, I promise. I'll go." Rebecca smiled, the first genuine smile he'd seen on her face in a long time. "Your father is watching, and he's so proud of you." Later that night, after Tyler had eaten his dinner and checked on Emily, who had fallen asleep at her desk with her laptop still open, he stood at his bedroom window looking out at the Nashville skyline. Somewhere out there, in one of those buildings or studios or homes, George Strait was probably settling in for the night, not thinking twice about the encounter at the restaurant. But for Tyler, everything had changed. For the first time in over a year, he felt something he'd almost forgotten: hope. The next morning arrived with the kind of crystalline clarity that only late October could bring to Tennessee. Tyler woke at 6:30 to the sound of his alarm, his first conscious thought being of the business card still sitting on his nightstand. For a moment, he wondered if the entire previous evening had been a dream, some stress-induced fantasy his exhausted mind had conjured. But no, the card was real. George Strait's name embossed in dark blue letters, the address of a recording studio written on the back in neat handwriting. He lay in bed for a few extra minutes, something he rarely allowed himself, and thought about what this could mean. 3 days. He had 3 days until Thursday afternoon. 3 days to prepare himself mentally for whatever might happen at that studio. 3 days to practice. To remember who he used to be before grief and responsibility had reshaped him into someone else entirely. The smell of coffee drifted under his bedroom door, followed by the sound of his sister Emily moving around in the kitchen. Tyler forced himself out of bed, pulled on sweatpants and a t-shirt, and padded down the short hallway to find Emily standing at the counter, pouring coffee into 2 mugs. She looked up when he entered, her face breaking into a smile. "Morning, big brother. You got in late last night." Emily Bennett was a younger, feminine version of Tyler. She had the same dark hair, though hers fell in waves past her shoulders, and the same green eyes that seemed to see more than they should. At 19, she was caught between adolescence and adulthood, carrying the weight of their father's death differently than Tyler, but no less profoundly. "Busy night at the restaurant," Tyler said, accepting the coffee mug she offered. "How's the essay coming?" Emily made a face. "Terrible. They want to know about a challenge I've overcome and how it shaped my character. But how do I write about Dad dying without sounding like I'm using it for sympathy points? And how do I explain that I've basically watched my brother give up everything for us without making you sound like a martyr? I'm not a martyr, Em. I'm just doing what needs to be done." "Exactly what a martyr would say," she replied, but her tone was affectionate rather than critical. She studied him over the rim of her coffee mug. "You look different this morning. Did something happen?" Tyler hesitated, then decided there was no point in hiding it. Emily would find out eventually. Something did happen, actually. Something pretty crazy. He told her about George Strait, about the singing, about the invitation to the studio. Emily's eyes grew wider with each sentence, and by the time he finished, she had set her coffee down and was gripping the edge of the counter with both hands. "Oh my God! Oh my God, Tyler, this is huge! This is literally life-changing! You're going, right? Please, tell me you're going." "I'm going. I promised Mom I would." "Good. Because if you didn't, I would have personally dragged you there myself." Emily came around the counter and hugged him tightly. "Tyler, this is what you've always wanted. This is your chance to get back to who you really are." "I don't know who that is anymore, Em. It's been so long." She pulled back and looked at him seriously, suddenly seeming much older than her 19 years. "Then maybe it's time to find out." After Emily left for her shift at the campus bookstore where she worked part-time, Tyler found himself at loose ends. He didn't have to be at the harvest table until 4 that afternoon, which meant he had hours to fill. Normally, he would use this time to catch up on sleep, do laundry, run errands, or help his mother with whatever she needed. But today, he felt a pull towards something he hadn't done in over a year. In the back of his closet, pushed behind boxes of old clothes and forgotten belongings, was his guitar case. It was covered in a thin layer of dust, the latches slightly tarnished from lack of use. Tyler pulled it out and set it on his bed, his heart beating faster than it should have been for such a simple action. He opened the case slowly, as if afraid of what he might find inside. His guitar, a beautiful Taylor 814C that he'd saved for months to buy, lay nestled in the velvet lining. The wood still gleamed, the strings still strung, waiting. Tyler ran his fingers along the neck, feeling the familiar grooves and calluses on his fingertips that had never quite gone away despite the months without playing. He lifted the guitar out of the case and sat on the edge of his bed, cradling the instrument in his lap. It felt both foreign and familiar, like meeting an old friend after years apart. Slowly, carefully, he strummed a chord. The sound was slightly out of tune, but it was music, and it resonated through his chest in a way that made his eyes water. Tyler spent the next hour retuning the guitar and playing softly, his fingers remembering patterns and progressions that his mind had tried to forget. He played old country classics, songs by Merle Haggard and George Jones, by Alan Jackson and Randy Travis. He played songs he'd written himself, melodies that had come to him in the middle of the night or while driving down empty highways. And slowly, something inside him began to thaw. The ice that had formed around his heart, the numbness he'd cultivated to get through each day, started to crack. Music had always been his language, his way of processing emotions too big for words. Without it, he'd been operating at half capacity, going through the motions of life without truly living. His mother appeared in his doorway, leaning against the frame for support. She didn't say anything, just stood there listening with tears streaming down her face. When Tyler noticed her, he stopped playing. "Don't stop," Rebecca said softly. "Please, I haven't heard you play in so long." Tyler started again, and this time he sang. He sang "Go Rest High on That Mountain" by Vince Gill, a song about loss and grief and the hope of reunion. His voice cracked on some of the higher notes, rusty from disuse, but the emotion was pure and raw. By the time he reached the final chorus, both he and his mother were crying openly. "Your father loved that song," Rebecca said when he finished. "We played it at his funeral." "I know. I couldn't sing it then. I can barely sing it now." Rebecca came into the room and sat beside him on the bed. "Grief is strange, Tyler. It changes shape and form. Some days it's a crushing weight, and other days it's just a dull ache. But it never truly leaves. We just learn to carry it differently." "I miss him so much, Mom. Every single day." "So do I, baby. So do I." She put her arm around his shoulders. "But he's still with us, in our memories and in our hearts. And he would want you to keep living, keep creating, keep being the person you were meant to be." They sat together in silence for a while. Tyler still holding his guitar, Rebecca's arm around him. Outside, the morning sun climbed higher in the sky, and the sounds of their neighborhood drifted through the window. Car doors closing, dogs barking, children laughing as they played in a nearby yard. Finally, Rebecca spoke again. "When you go to that studio on Thursday, I want you to sing for yourself. Not for George Strait, not for any record label, not even for your father's memory. Sing because you love it, because it's who you are. That's when the magic happens." Tyler nodded, unable to speak around the lump in his throat. His mother kissed his forehead the way she used to when he was a child, then slowly made her way back to her room to rest. For the rest of the morning and into the early afternoon, Tyler practiced. He ran through scales and vocal exercises, stretching his voice like an athlete stretching muscles before a big game. His range had shrunk slightly from lack of use, but it was still there, still powerful. He worked on his breathing, his phrasing, his dynamics. He practiced songs he knew George Strait would recognize, and he practiced his own original material. At 3 o'clock, he reluctantly put the guitar away and got ready for work. The shift at the harvest table passed in a blur of familiar routines. Jennifer kept giving him knowing looks and asking if he'd practiced, if he was nervous, if he knew what he was going to sing. Tyler deflected her questions with good humor, but internally, he was more nervous than he wanted to admit. During his break, he stepped outside into the alley behind the restaurant to get some fresh air. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink that seemed almost too vibrant to be real. He pulled out his phone and, after a moment of hesitation, opened his Photos app and scrolled back through his camera roll until he found what he was looking for. There, from 2 years ago, was a photo of him on stage at the Bluebird Cafe. His eyes were closed, his mouth open mid-song, his guitar slung across his chest. He looked happy, truly happy, in a way he hadn't been in so long. Behind him, he could see faces in the crowd, all turned toward him, all listening intently. That person in the photo felt like a stranger now. Tyler barely recognized himself. "Hey, you okay out here?" It was James, stepping out for a smoke break, even though he'd quit smoking 5 years ago and just stood outside pretending. "Yeah, just thinking. About Thursday?" Among other things. James leaned against the brick wall, his chef's whites slightly stained from the dinner rush. "Can I tell you something, Tyler? Something I've never told you before?" "Sure. I used to play music too, long time ago, before I got into cooking. I played bass in a rock band, and we were actually pretty good. We had some interest from labels, played some decent venues, but I got scared of failure, scared of what it would mean if I actually tried and didn't make it. So I walked away, told myself I was being practical, being realistic." Tyler looked at him in surprise. "I had no idea." "Yeah. Well, it's not something I advertise, and most days I'm okay with the choice I made. I love cooking, I'm good at it, and it's given me a stable life. But sometimes, late at night when I can't sleep, I wonder what would have happened if I'd been brave enough to try." James met Tyler's eyes. "Don't be like me, kid. Don't let fear make your decisions for you. You've got something special, something worth risking everything for. Don't waste it. What if I'm not good enough? What if I've been away from it too long? And what if you are good enough? What if this is your moment, and you let it pass you by because you were too scared to find out?" James pushed off from the wall. "Only one way to know for sure. You have to step up to the plate and take your swing." That night, after his shift ended, Tyler drove to a place he hadn't visited in months. Centennial Park, with its full-scale replica of the Parthenon, was quiet and peaceful at 10 o'clock on a Tuesday night. The few people who were around were dog walkers or couples taking romantic strolls, all giving him space as he walked the familiar paths. He and his father used to come here together, especially in the months before Tyler's career had started gaining momentum. David would walk beside his son, listening as Tyler talked through his dreams and fears, always offering steady, practical advice tempered with unwavering belief. "The thing about dreams," David had said during one of their last walks here, "is that they're only impossible if you decide they are. Everything else is just obstacles, and obstacles can be overcome with enough determination and hard work." Tyler sat on a bench overlooking the lake, watching the lights reflect off the dark water. He pulled out his phone and opened his voice memos app, something he used to do constantly when he was writing songs. He hadn't recorded anything in over a year, but tonight, words were coming to him. He hit record and began to speak softly, almost to himself. "There's a silence in my soul where music used to be. There's an emptiness in moments that were once filled with melody. I've been walking through my days like a ghost inside my life, going through the motions but not feeling quite alive. But tonight, I heard an echo of the person I once was, and it reminded me that sometimes we become lost, not all at once, but slowly. So slowly we don't notice until we're too far gone to find our way back easily." He paused, thinking, then continued, "But maybe that's the journey. Maybe finding our way back is what makes the destination meaningful. Maybe we have to lose ourselves completely before we can discover who we're truly meant to be." Tyler stopped recording and listened back to what he'd said. It wasn't a song yet, but it was the beginning of one, the seed of something that could grow into something beautiful if he nurtured it. His phone buzzed with a text message from Emily. "Mom's asleep. I'm working on my essay. How was work?" Are you still planning to go Thursday? Please say yes. He typed back, Yes, I'm going. I'm terrified, but I'm going. Her response was immediate. Good. Being terrified means it matters. Love you. Love you too, Em. Tyler stayed at the park for another hour, just sitting and thinking, and occasionally playing voice memos of song ideas. When he finally drove home, it was nearly midnight, and the streets were mostly empty. As he pulled into his parking space, he noticed a car he didn't recognize parked nearby, but thought nothing of it. Inside the apartment, he found a note on the kitchen counter in his mother's handwriting. There's leftover chicken casserole in the fridge. Heat it for 2 minutes. I'm proud of you. Mom. He smiled, heated the food, and ate standing at the counter, his mind already on Thursday. 2 more days. 2 more days until he walked into George Strait's studio and either reclaimed his dream or had it confirmed that he'd waited too long, that the window had closed. As he finally crawled into bed at 1 in the morning, exhausted but strangely energized, Tyler made himself a promise. Whatever happened on Thursday, he wouldn't let fear control him anymore. He would walk into that studio with his head up and his heart open, and he would sing like his life depended on it. Because maybe, just maybe, it did. Wednesday morning dawned gray and overcast, with a cold drizzle that matched Tyler's nervous energy. He'd barely slept, tossing and turning while his mind raced through every possible scenario for the next day. What if he got there and his voice cracked? What if he froze up? What if George Strait had already forgotten about the whole thing and Tyler showed up to an empty studio? He forced himself out of bed at 7, determined to use the day productively. After a quick shower, he found Emily already awake and dressed, sitting at the kitchen table with her laptop open and a determined expression on her face. Couldn't sleep either? Tyler asked, pouring himself coffee. Finished my essay at 4 this morning, Emily replied, rubbing her eyes. Want to read it? Of course. She turned the laptop toward him, and Tyler sat down to read. The essay was titled The Music of Sacrifice, and it told the story of their family's last year and a half with raw honesty. Emily wrote about their father's death, about watching their mother struggle with depression, about seeing her brother give up his dreams to keep the family afloat. But she also wrote about resilience, about how sacrifice doesn't have to mean the end of hope, and about how sometimes the strongest thing you can do is accept help when it's offered. By the time Tyler finished reading, his eyes were damp. Em, this is beautiful. It's honest and powerful, and exactly what they're looking for. You think so? I was worried it might be too personal. Personal is good. Personal is what makes it real. He closed the laptop and looked at his sister seriously. I need you to know something. Everything I've done this past year, every choice I've made, I don't regret it. You and Mom are worth everything to me. I know that, Tyler. But you're worth something too. Your dreams matter just as much as ours. Emily reached across the table and grabbed his hand. Promise me that tomorrow you'll remember that. Promise me you won't hold back because you think you don't deserve this opportunity. I promise. After Emily left for class, Tyler spent the morning practicing again, but this time with more focus. He'd decided on 3 songs to prepare. Amarillo by Morning, since that's what he'd been singing when George heard him. One of his own original songs called Weathered Roads, and The Chair by George Strait, a classic story song that would showcase his ability to connect emotionally with lyrics. His mother emerged from her room around 11, moving slowly but with more energy than Tyler had seen in weeks. She settled into her recliner with a cup of tea and listened as he practiced, occasionally offering gentle suggestions about phrasing or emotion. You're holding back on the bridge of your original, she observed after he'd sung through Weathered Roads for the 3rd time. You wrote those lyrics about your father, didn't you? Tyler nodded, his throat tight. Yeah, it's about all the conversations we had while he was driving me to gigs, all the advice he gave me about life and music and staying true to myself. Then sing it like he's listening. Because he is, in his own way. Rebecca's eyes were fierce with conviction. Don't be afraid of the emotion, Tyler. That's what makes it powerful. He tried again, and this time he let himself feel every word, every memory embedded in the lyrics. His voice shook on certain lines, but it was authentic. And when he finished, his mother was crying again. That's it. That's the one that will make them understand what they're hearing. Around noon, Tyler's phone rang with an unfamiliar number. His heart jumped, wondering if it was George Strait calling to cancel. But when he answered, a different voice greeted him. Is this Tyler Bennett? Yes, this is Tyler. Tyler, my name is Jerry Davis. I'm George Strait's manager. George called me yesterday and told me about meeting you at the restaurant. I wanted to reach out personally to confirm your appointment tomorrow at 2 p.m. and give you some details about what to expect. Tyler's hand trembled slightly as he held the phone. Thank you, Mr. Davis. Yes, I'll be there. Please, call me Jerry. Here's what's going to happen. You'll come to the studio, which is in the Berry Hill neighborhood, and you'll sing for George and myself. Maybe a few other folks if they happen to be around. Nothing formal, nothing high pressure. Just you and your guitar, if you play, and a chance for us to hear what you can do. George mentioned you used to perform around Nashville. Why'd you stop? Tyler hesitated, then decided honesty was the only policy. He gave Jerry a brief version of the story. His father's death, his mother's illness, his need to provide stability for his family. Jerry was quiet for a moment after Tyler finished. That takes a lot of character, son. A lot of people would have run from that responsibility. But let me ask you something. If we like what we hear tomorrow, if there's potential for something more, are you in a position to pursue it? I'll make myself be in that position, Tyler said firmly. I've spent the last year putting my life on hold. I think it's time I started living it again. Good answer. See you tomorrow, Tyler, and don't be nervous. George doesn't invite just anyone to his studio. He sees something in you, and George's instincts are rarely wrong. After the call ended, Tyler sat for a long moment, processing what had just happened. This was real. This was actually happening. Tomorrow at 2 p.m., he would walk into a professional recording studio and sing for one of the biggest legends in country music history. He was terrified. He spent the afternoon at work in a daze, going through the motions of taking orders and delivering food, but not really present. Jennifer noticed immediately and cornered him in the back room. "You're freaking out," she stated matter-of-factly. "That obvious? You just asked Table 5 if they wanted the salmon special 3 times in a row, and they ordered the steak. So yeah, pretty obvious." She crossed her arms and studied him. "Talk to me. What's going on in that head of yours?" "I'm scared, Jen. I'm scared I've forgotten how to do this. I'm scared I'll get there and disappoint everyone. I'm scared that even if I'm good, it won't be enough. I'm scared of hoping for something and having it ripped away again." Jennifer's expression softened. "Tyler, do you know what I see when I look at you? I see someone who's been through hell and kept going. Someone who sacrificed everything for the people he loves. Someone with more courage in his little finger than most people have in their whole body. And you're telling me you're scared of singing? It's not just singing, though. It's everything that comes with it. What if this actually works? What if they want to sign me or produce an album or whatever comes next? How do I juggle that with taking care of Mom and Emily? How do I make sure everyone's okay while I'm chasing this dream? You figure it out as you go. That's what life is, Tyler. We're all just figuring it out as we go. making the best decisions we can with the information we have. But you can't make any decisions at all if you don't show up tomorrow and take this shot." A customer interrupted them, needing a refill on iced tea, and Tyler returned to work. But Jennifer's words stayed with him throughout the rest of his shift. She was right. He'd survived this past year by taking things one day at a time, one problem at a time. This was no different. That evening, as Tyler's shift was winding down, something unexpected happened. A man in his mid-50s walked into the restaurant, looked around, and then approached Tyler directly. "Tyler Bennett." "Yes? My name is Michael Patterson. I'm a music journalist for the Tennessean. I heard through the grapevine about what happened here Monday night with George Strait. I was wondering if I could ask you a few questions for a piece I'm writing about undiscovered talent in Nashville." Tyler felt panic rise in his chest. "How did you hear about that?" "Nashville's a small town when it comes to the music business. Word gets around, especially when it involves someone like George Strait taking interest in an unknown singer." Michael pulled out a small notebook. "I'd love to get your side of the story." Tyler glanced around the restaurant, aware that several customers and his co-workers were watching with interest. The last thing he needed was publicity before he'd even had his audition. What if it jinxed everything? "Mr. Patterson, I appreciate your interest, but I don't think I'm ready to talk to the press. Nothing's even happened yet. For all I know, tomorrow I'll go to that studio, and George will realize he made a mistake." Michael studied him thoughtfully. "That's a remarkably humble response. Most people in your position would be calling every media outlet they could think of, trying to generate buzz. The fact that you're not tells me something about your character." He tucked his notebook away. "Tell you what, I'll hold off on writing anything for now. But when you're ready to tell your story, assuming tomorrow goes well, I'd like to be the one you tell it to. Deal?" "Deal," Tyler agreed, shaking the journalist's hand. After Michael left, James emerged from the kitchen with a knowing smile. "You're about to become famous, kid. I can feel it." "Don't jinx it." "I'm not jinxing anything. I'm stating a fact. This time next year, you're going to be playing sold-out shows and writing hit songs, and we're all going to say we knew you when you were just a waiter at the harvest table." Tyler wanted to believe him, but years of disappointment had taught him to guard his hopes carefully. Let's see what happens tomorrow first. The rest of the evening passed without incident, and Tyler drove home around 11, his mind already on the next day. When he walked into the apartment, he found both his mother and Emily still awake, sitting together on the couch watching an old movie. "Family meeting," Emily announced when she saw him. "We need to talk about tomorrow." Tyler sat in the armchair across from them, suddenly worried. "Is something wrong?" "The opposite," Rebecca said. "Emily and I have been talking, and we want you to know that you have our full support tomorrow, no matter what happens. If George Strait offers you an opportunity, we want you to take it without worrying about us." "Mom, I can't just—" "Yes, you can," Emily interrupted. "Tyler, you've taken care of us for a year and a half. Let us take care of ourselves for a while. I've got my job at the bookstore, and I can pick up extra shifts if needed. Mom's been feeling better lately, and she's talked to her doctor about starting a new treatment that might help with the depression." "You have?" Tyler looked at his mother in surprise. Rebecca nodded. "I've been letting grief control me for too long. Watching you these past few days, seeing you come back to life with music, it reminded me that David wouldn't want either of us living half a life. He'd want us to heal, to move forward, to find joy again. But what about money? The bills? Emily's college applications?" "We'll figure it out," Emily said firmly. "We're Bennetts. We're tougher than we look. Besides, if this actually works out for you, maybe someday you'll be rich and famous and can support us." She grinned to show she was joking, mostly. Tyler felt something crack inside his chest, some wall he'd been maintaining crumbling away. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll go in there tomorrow and show them what you're made of," Rebecca said. "Say you'll stop holding back and let yourself want this again. Say you'll remember that you're allowed to have dreams too." "I promise," Tyler said, his voice rough with emotion. "I promise I'll give it everything I have." They sat together for a while longer, talking about memories of David, about the future, about all the what-ifs that tomorrow might bring. When Tyler finally went to bed at midnight, he felt lighter than he had in months, as if some massive burden had been lifted from his shoulders. He set 3 alarms for the next morning, terrified of oversleeping, then lay in bed staring at the ceiling. Sleep felt impossible, his mind racing with melody and lyrics and possibility. But eventually, exhaustion won out, and he drifted off into restless dreams of stages and spotlights and his father's face in the crowd, smiling with pride. Thursday morning arrived with brilliant sunshine, as if the universe was offering good omens. Tyler woke before his first alarm, showered, and dressed carefully in dark jeans, boots, and a simple button-down shirt in a deep blue. He wanted to look professional but authentic, like someone who belonged in a Nashville studio. Emily had already left for class, but she'd left a note on the kitchen counter. "Go get 'em, superstar. We believe in you. Love, M." His mother was awake, dressed and sitting at the kitchen table with coffee and toast, looking more alert and present than Tyler had seen her in months. "You look handsome," she said when he emerged from his room, guitar case in hand. "I look nervous. You look ready." Rebecca stood and walked over to him, reaching up to adjust his collar. "Your father would be so proud of you today. I wish he could be here to see this. Maybe he will be, in his own way." She kissed his cheek. "Sing from your heart, Tyler. That's all you need to do. The rest will take care of itself." Tyler left the apartment at noon, even though the studio was only a 20-minute drive away. He needed time to sit with his thoughts, to prepare himself mentally for what was coming. He drove to Centennial Park first, parking near the Parthenon, and sitting in his car with the windows down, listening to the sounds of the city around him. At 1:30, he finally started the drive to Berry Hill. His hands were shaking on the steering wheel, and his heart was pounding so hard he could feel it in his throat. He'd performed hundreds of times before, had sung in front of crowds large and small. But this felt different. This felt like everything. The studio was a nondescript building on a quiet street, its exterior giving no indication of the magic that happened inside. Tyler parked in the small lot, grabbed his guitar, and sat in his car for 5 more minutes, breathing deeply and trying to calm his nerves. At 1:58 p.m., he finally forced himself to get out of the car and walk to the entrance. There was a small intercom system, and when he pressed the button, a woman's voice answered immediately. "Tyler Bennett?" "Yes, ma'am." "Come on in. We're ready for you." The door buzzed, and Tyler pushed it open, stepping into his future. The interior of the studio was both exactly what Tyler expected and completely different from anything he'd imagined. The reception area was small and tastefully decorated, with walls covered in framed gold and platinum records, photographs of country music legends, and vintage concert posters. A young woman with short blonde hair and a warm smile sat behind a modern desk, and she stood when Tyler entered. "Tyler Bennett, welcome. I'm Rachel, Jerry's assistant. Can I get you anything? Water? Coffee?" "Water would be great, thank you." Tyler's mouth felt like sandpaper. Rachel handed him a bottle of water from a small refrigerator, then gestured toward a hallway. "Follow me. They're waiting for you in Studio B." As they walked down the corridor, Tyler's heart hammered against his ribs. He could hear music coming from one of the rooms, a bass line and drums laying down a track. In another room, someone was singing, their voice muffled but powerful. This was a working studio, a place where hit songs were created. Rachel stopped at a door marked Studio B and knocked twice before opening it. "Tyler's here." The studio was larger than Tyler expected, with high ceilings and sound-dampening panels on the walls. In the center was a vocal booth with a professional microphone setup. And beyond that, a control room with an impressive mixing board and monitors. Standing near the control room window were two men. George Strait looked exactly as he had at the restaurant, dressed casually in jeans and a simple shirt, his expression calm and welcoming. Beside him was a man Tyler assumed was Jerry Davis, shorter and stockier, with gray hair and sharp, intelligent eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. "Tyler, glad you made it," George said, crossing the room to shake his hand. "This is Jerry Davis, my manager." "Nice to meet you, sir," Tyler managed, his voice steadier than he felt. "The pleasure's mine," Jerry replied. "George has been talking about you non-stop since Monday. That's rare. George doesn't get excited about much anymore." There was affection in his teasing tone. "Don't listen to him," George said with a slight smile. "I get excited about plenty of things. Good voices, good songs, good food. Sometimes all at once, if I'm lucky." He gestured toward Tyler's guitar case. "You brought your guitar. Good. Why don't you get set up in the booth, and we'll see what you've got." Tyler's hands trembled slightly as he opened his case and lifted out his Taylor. The guitar felt like an old friend, familiar and comforting. A sound engineer Tyler hadn't noticed before, a woman in her 30s with multiple piercings and vibrant purple hair, helped him adjust the microphone stand and showed him how to put on the studio headphones. "I'm Melissa," she said. "I'll be running the board. Don't worry about anything technical. Just focus on singing. You ready?" "As ready as I'll ever be." Melissa gave him a thumbs up and retreated to the control room, where George and Jerry had settled into chairs facing the window. Through the glass, Tyler could see them clearly, could see George leaning forward with interest, Jerry with a notepad in his lap. Tyler strapped on his guitar, adjusted the headphones, and took a deep breath. The microphone stood before him like a challenge, like a doorway to another life. Through the headphones, he heard Melissa's voice. "Whenever you're ready, Tyler. No pressure, no rush. Just sing like you're back at that restaurant." Tyler closed his eyes for a moment, thinking of his father, of his mother's words that morning, of Emily's note. Then he opened them and began to play the opening chords of Amarillo by Morning. His fingers moved across the strings with muscle memory, finding the notes effortlessly. And when he opened his mouth to sing, something shifted inside him. The nervousness didn't disappear entirely, but it transformed into energy, into passion. His voice filled the booth, rich and textured, carrying every ounce of emotion he'd been holding back for the past year and a half. In the control room, George and Jerry exchanged a look. George's expression was one of vindication, of "I told you so," without saying a word. Jerry's eyebrows had risen nearly to his hairline, and he was scribbling notes furiously. Tyler sang through the entire song, not missing a word, not faltering once. When the final note faded away, there was silence for a moment. Then George's voice came through the headphones. "That was outstanding, Tyler. Really outstanding. What else you got for us?" Encouraged, Tyler moved into his original song, Weathered Roads. This one was more personal, more vulnerable, and he'd wondered if he could get through it without breaking down. But as he sang about late-night drives with his father, about lessons learned on highways and back roads, about wisdom passed from one generation to the next, he found strength in the words rather than pain. Weathered roads and wisdom shared in the cab of a pickup truck. Stories of struggle, tales of luck, and how to give a damn and not give up. He taught me more in those quiet miles than I learned in all my years of school. He taught me that integrity matters, that a man's word is his greatest tool. Now those roads feel empty, the passenger seat bare, but I still hear his voice in the engine's hum, reminding me he's always there. When the song ended, Tyler looked up to see George standing now, his hands pressed against the glass, his face deeply moved. Jerry was no longer writing, just listening with his full attention. "Son," George said, his voice thick with emotion, "that's one of the finest songs I've heard in 20 years. Did you write that?" "Yes, sir, about my father. We used to drive around Nashville together when I was starting out, and he'd talk to me about life and music and staying true to yourself." "When did you lose him?" 14 months ago. Construction accident. George was quiet for a long moment. "I'm sorry for your loss, but I'm grateful you turned that grief into something beautiful. That's what the best country songs do. They take life's hardest moments and make them universal, make people feel less alone." He glanced at Jerry. "One more song, Tyler. Give us everything you've got." Tyler chose "The Chair," the classic George Strait song about a missed connection in a bar. It was a story song, the kind that required acting as much as singing, making the listener see the scene, feel the emotions. Tyler had always loved these kinds of songs, the way they could transport you to another place and time. He sang it with confidence now, his nervousness completely gone, replaced by the pure joy of making music. He added subtle variations to the melody, made it his own while still respecting the original. And when he reached the final lines, he held the last note with perfect control, letting it ring out and fade naturally. The silence that followed was profound. Then, through the headphones, Tyler heard Jerry say simply, "Well, damn." Melissa's voice came next. "That was incredible. Seriously, chills." George opened the door to the booth and walked in, and Tyler suddenly realized the legendary singer was going to be standing right in front of him. George extended his hand, and Tyler shook it, noting the genuine warmth in the older man's grip. "Tyler, I'm going to be straight with you. What you just did in here, that's the real deal. That's what I've been looking for, what the industry needs more of. Authenticity, emotion, technical skill, and original material that matters. You've got all of it." "Thank you, sir. That means everything coming from you. Call me George, please. We're going to be working together, so we might as well drop the formalities." He turned as Jerry entered the booth as well. "Jerry, tell him what we're thinking." Jerry looked at Tyler with the expression of someone who'd just discovered gold. "Tyler, we'd like to produce a demo for you. 3 or 4 songs, including that original you just sang. We'll cover all the costs, bring in session musicians, do this properly. Then we'll shop it around to labels and see what kind of interest we can generate." Tyler felt lightheaded. "You want to produce a demo for me?" "Not just any demo," George clarified. "I want to produce it personally. I haven't done that for anyone in years. But your voice and your songs deserve that level of attention. This isn't a guarantee of a record deal. I want to be clear about that. But it's a foot in the door, and it's a foot in a very important door." "I don't know what to say. This is beyond anything I imagined." "Say yes," Jerry suggested with a slight smile. "That's usually the appropriate response. Yes, absolutely yes. Whatever you need from me, whenever you need it, I'm there." George clapped him on the shoulder. "Good. Now, let's talk logistics. We'll need to schedule studio time, probably over the course of a few weeks, so we can get it right without rushing. Jerry will draw up a contract that protects both you and us. And Tyler, you're going to need to quit your job at that restaurant." Tyler's stomach dropped. "Quit my job? But I need the income. My family depends on it. Jerry held up a hand. We're not asking you to quit without support. We'll pay you a monthly stipend while we're working on this demo, enough to cover your basic expenses. Think of it as an advance against future earnings. You can't work double shifts at a restaurant and put your full energy into making the best music you're capable of. Something has to give. My mother is sick, and my sister is trying to get into college. The stipend would have to be enough to cover all of that. How much do you make now, between your job and tips? Jerry asked. Tyler did quick mental math. About $3,000 a month on a good month. We'll give you $5,000 a month for the next 6 months, with the understanding that you'll devote that time to working on your music. If we get you signed before the 6 months are up, great. If not, at least you'll have given this a real shot, and you'll have a professional demo you can use to keep pursuing opportunities. Jerry pulled out his phone and started typing. I'll have the contract drawn up by tomorrow. Tyler's mind was reeling. $5,000 a month. That was more than he made at the restaurant. More than enough to cover their expenses, and maybe even start saving for Emily's college. It was the safety net he needed to take this risk. There's one more thing, George said, his expression turning serious. If we're going to do this right, you need to be all in. That means showing up to writing sessions, to recording sessions, to meetings. It means being professional and prepared. And it means being willing to take criticism and direction. Can you do that? Yes, sir. George, Tyler corrected himself. I can do that. Then we have a deal. George smiled, the first full smile Tyler had seen from him. Welcome to the team, Tyler Bennett. I have a feeling we're about to make something special together. They spent the next hour discussing details. Melissa played back the recordings of Tyler's performance, and they listened critically, discussing what worked and what could be improved. George offered suggestions about phrasing and dynamics, always encouraging rather than critical. Jerry talked about timelines, about which labels might be interested, about the business side of things that Tyler had never really considered. By the time Tyler walked out of the studio at 5 o'clock, his head was spinning and his heart was soaring. He sat in his car for 10 minutes, just processing what had happened. Then he pulled out his phone and called his mother. Mom, it went well. It went really, really well. Rebecca's voice was tight with emotion. Tell me everything. Tyler did, the words tumbling out in a rush. He told her about the songs he'd sung, about George's reaction, about the offer to produce a demo, and the stipend that would support them while he pursued this opportunity. By the time he finished, they were both crying. Your father would be so proud, Rebecca said. I'm so proud. You did it, Tyler. You took the chance, and you did it. I couldn't have done it without you and Em pushing me. This is for all of us, Mom. This is our second chance. When he got home an hour later, Emily was already there, pacing the living room anxiously. The moment she saw his face, she knew. It happened, she said, not a question but a statement. Oh my God, it actually happened. Tyler grabbed his sister and spun her around, both of them laughing and crying at the same time. It happened. I'm going to record a demo with George Strait. I'm actually going to do this. Rebecca emerged from her room, moving faster than Tyler had seen her move in months, and joined the hug. For a few minutes, they just held each other. A family that had been broken by tragedy, beginning to heal through hope. That evening, Tyler called the harvest table and asked to speak with the manager, David Chen, a kind man in his 40s who had always been understanding about Tyler's situation. David, I need to give you my 2 weeks' notice. I've been offered an opportunity to pursue my music career, and I have to take it. There was a pause, then David's voice came back warm with genuine happiness. Tyler, that's wonderful news, but you don't need to give 2 weeks. If you need to start immediately, we'll make it work. You've been a great employee, and I want to see you succeed. Are you sure? I don't want to leave you short-staffed. We'll figure it out. This is your dream, Tyler. Don't let anything stand in the way of it." Tyler thanked him profusely and promised to come in the next day to collect his things and say proper goodbyes. After he hung up, he sat with his mother and sister, and they talked late into the night about what this could mean, about possibilities and dreams, and the future that had suddenly opened up before them. "What if it doesn't work out?" Emily asked at one point. "What if you make the demo and no one wants to sign you?" "Then at least I'll know I tried," Tyler answered. "At least I won't spend the rest of my life wondering what if. And besides, even if the worst happens, I'll have spent 6 months doing what I love, making music with one of my heroes. That's worth something all by itself." Rebecca nodded approvingly. "That's exactly the right attitude. Success isn't just about the destination. It's about the journey and what you learn along the way." The next few days passed in a blur of activity. Tyler went to the harvest table to say goodbye to his co-workers, and they threw him an impromptu celebration in the kitchen after closing, with James making a special meal and everyone toasting to his success. Jennifer hugged him tightly and made him promise to remember them when he was famous. "You're going to do incredible things," she said. "I knew it from the first time I heard you humming while cleaning tables. You've got something special, Tyler. Don't let anyone tell you different." Jerry's assistant Rachel called with details about the contract, which Tyler reviewed carefully before signing. The terms were more than fair, almost generous. The stipend would start immediately, and they'd begin recording in 1 week, giving Tyler time to prepare and practice. George called personally to check in and discuss song selection for the demo. "I want to do Weathered Roads, for sure," he said. "That's your single. I can feel it. Do you have any other originals?" "I have about a dozen songs I've written over the years. Some are finished, some need work. Bring them all to the studio next week. We'll go through them together and see what speaks to us. And Tyler, start living like a musician again. Go to shows, listen to music, let yourself be inspired. You've been in survival mode for too long. It's time to start creating again." Tyler took that advice to heart. That weekend, he went to the Bluebird Cafe for the first time in over a year, sitting in the audience instead of performing on stage. He watched young singers-songwriters pour their hearts out, and he remembered what it felt like to be that hungry, that passionate. He went to record stores and bought albums by artists he admired. He drove around Nashville with the windows down, letting the city's music seep back into his bones. On Sunday afternoon, he visited his father's grave for the first time in months. He'd been avoiding it, the pain too raw. But now he felt ready. He sat on the grass beside the headstone and talked to his father the way he used to, telling him about George Strait, about the demo, about everything that was happening. "I hope I'm making you proud, Dad," he said quietly. "I hope this is what you wanted for me. I'm scared and excited and grateful all at once. I wish you could be here to see this, but I feel like maybe you are, in some way." A breeze rustled through the trees overhead, and Tyler chose to interpret it as a sign, as his father's way of saying he was listening. On Monday morning, exactly 1 week after that life-changing dinner at the harvest table, Tyler walked into the studio for his first official recording session. George was already there, along with Jerry, Melissa the engineer, and 3 session musicians, a drummer named Carl Wheeler, a bassist named Patricia Lawson, and a steel guitar player named Tommy Chen, all veterans of the Nashville scene who had played on countless hit records. "Everyone, this is Tyler Bennett," George announced. "For the next few weeks, we're going to help him make the best demo he's capable of. I expect you all to bring your A game because this young man has something special, and we're going to make sure the world hears it." The musicians welcomed Tyler warmly, and they spent the first hour just talking through arrangements, discussing how to build the songs from the ground up. George was patient and encouraging, offering suggestions, but always deferring to Tyler when it came to the emotional core of the songs. "This is your music, your vision," George said. "We're just here to help you bring it to life in the best way possible." They started with "Weathered Roads," breaking it down piece by piece. Carl laid down a simple, steady beat that drove the song forward. Patricia added a walking bass line that gave it depth. Tommy's steel guitar wept through the chorus, adding layers of emotion. And Tyler sang, his voice blending with the instrumentation in a way that gave him chills. By the end of the day, they had a rough cut of the song that was already better than anything Tyler had imagined. As he listened to the playback, sitting in the control room with George beside him, he felt tears streaming down his face. "You okay?" George asked quietly. "More than okay. I'm just overwhelmed. A week ago, I was serving tables and thinking my dream was dead. Now I'm here, making music with you, and it's better than anything I could have hoped for." George smiled. "This is just the beginning, Tyler. Wait until you hear what we're going to do with the rest of your songs. You're about to see what's possible when talent meets opportunity." And for the first time in 14 months, Tyler allowed himself to fully believe it. He was a musician again. He was alive again. And whatever happened next, he would face it with the courage his father had taught him and the support of the people who loved him. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, it was also bright with possibility. 3 weeks into recording, Tyler had become a different person. Not fundamentally, not in ways that mattered, but in all the small details that made up a life. He walked taller, smiled more easily, and carried himself with the confidence of someone who had remembered who they were meant to be. The studio had become his second home, and the people there had become something like family. Melissa had taken to calling him Golden Pipes, much to his embarrassment and everyone else's amusement. Carl, the drummer, had started inviting him to musician hangouts where Tyler networked with other artists and writers. Patricia had introduced him to her husband, a music attorney, who offered free advice about navigating the industry. And Tommy had become a genuine friend, someone Tyler could call at midnight to discuss a melody that wouldn't leave his head. But it was George who had truly changed Tyler's life. The legendary singer had taken on a mentor role that went far beyond just producing a demo. He shared stories from his decades in the business, taught Tyler about the politics and pitfalls of the industry, and offered wisdom earned through years of success and occasional failure. "The thing people don't understand," George said one afternoon as they took a break from recording, sitting in the studio lounge with coffee, "is that talent is just the entry fee. What separates the ones who make it from the ones who don't is perseverance, professionalism, and knowing who you are. The industry will try to change you, mold you into what they think will sell. Your job is to stay true to yourself while still being open to growth." Tyler absorbed every word like a sponge. How do you know where that line is? Between compromise and collaboration? You feel it in your gut. If someone asks you to do something that makes you uncomfortable, that feels inauthentic. That's probably crossing the line. But if someone suggests changes that actually make your song better while still keeping its heart intact, that's collaboration. George set down his coffee. "Let me give you an example. Remember when Jerry suggested we change the bridge in Weathered Roads? Yeah, I was resistant at first. Right. But then we tried it his way. And what happened?" Tyler smiled, remembering. "It was better. It flowed more naturally and packed more emotional punch." "Exactly. That was your gut, telling you it was a good suggestion, even though your ego initially wanted to resist. Learning to separate ego from instinct is crucial. Setinti Haume. They'd completed 3 songs so far. Weathered Roads, a cover of The Chair that George insisted they include because Tyler's version brought new depth to it, and a new original Tyler had written called Second Chances. The 4th and final song for the demo was still being debated. Tyler had brought in all his old material, and they'd spent hours going through each song, discussing what worked and what needed revision. Some songs George immediately dismissed as not ready. Others he saw potential in, but suggested needed significant reworking. And then there was one that made him stop completely. It was called The Last Light, a ballad Tyler had written in the weeks after his father's death, but had never performed for anyone. It was raw and painful, about watching someone you love slip away and trying to hold on to every last moment. Tyler had been hesitant to even show it to George, afraid it was too personal, too dark for a demo meant to sell him to record labels. But George had listened to Tyler's simple guitar and vocal recording of it 3 times in a row before speaking. "This is the one, Tyler. This is the song that's going to make people truly understand what you're capable of. It's devastating and beautiful, and it's going to break hearts in the best way." "It might be too personal," Tyler had objected. "And it's so sad. Won't labels want something more upbeat?" Jerry had shaken his head. "Labels want something authentic and powerful. This is both. Some of the biggest country hits ever recorded have been heartbreaking ballads. Vince Gill's Go Rest High on That Mountain, Martina McBride's Concrete Angel, even George's own I Cross My Heart, in its own way. Emotion sells, Tyler, and this song has emotion in spades." So now, in the 4th week of recording, they were working on The Last Light. It required a delicate touch, a careful balance of instrumentation that enhanced the emotion without overwhelming it. They'd brought in a string quartet for this one, along with Tommy's steel guitar and Carl's brushes on the snare drum creating a whisper of rhythm. Tyler stood in the vocal booth, headphones on, the lyrics of the song written in his own hand on a music stand before him. Through the glass, he could see George, Jerry, and Melissa all watching intently. The musicians were ready, waiting for his cue. Melissa's voice came through the headphones. "This is take 7. Remember, Tyler, don't perform it. Just feel it, and let it come out naturally." Tyler closed his eyes and thought about his father. He thought about David's last words to him, spoken in the hospital before the infections set in and everything went wrong. "I'm proud of you, son. Never forget that." He began to sing. "The last light of evening falls across your face, and I'm memorizing every line, trying to capture this moment. Freeze it in time, knowing that tomorrow the sun will rise, but you might not. And I'm not ready, God. I'm not ready to say goodbye." His voice cracked on the last word, not from technical failure, but from genuine emotion. Tears streamed down his face as he sang through the verses, each line a memory, each chorus a prayer. The strings swelled behind him, Tommy's steel guitar crying out in harmony with his voice, and the combination was almost too much to bear. "They say time heals all wounds, that pain fades away, but they don't know that you took a piece of my heart when you went, and I'll carry that emptiness every single day. But maybe that's love. Maybe that's the price we pay for caring so deeply, for being so blessed to have had you in our lives, even if it wasn't nearly long enough." By the final chorus, everyone in the control room was crying. Carl had stopped playing, his hands frozen on his drums, tears running into his gray beard. Patricia had her face in her hands. Even George, who had seen and heard everything in his long career, had to wipe his eyes. When the last note faded away, there was complete silence. Tyler opened his eyes, suddenly worried that it had been too much, that he'd gone too far. Then George's voice came through the headphones, rough with emotion. "That's the take. Don't touch it. Don't change it. Don't even think about doing it again." That was perfect. Tyler left the vocal booth on shaky legs and was immediately enveloped in hugs. Melissa held him tight, whispering, "That was the most beautiful thing I've ever heard recorded in this studio." See, the musicians each offered their condolences and congratulations, understanding that they'd just been part of creating something special. George was the last to approach him. The legendary singer pulled Tyler into a firm embrace, and Tyler felt like he was being hugged by the father he'd lost. "Thank you for trusting us with that song," George said quietly. "Thank you for being brave enough to share something so personal. That's going to touch a lot of people who have experienced loss, who are carrying that same pain." Over the next week, they mixed and mastered the 4 tracks, a process Tyler found fascinating. He watched as Melissa made tiny adjustments to levels and EQ, bringing out different elements of each song, creating space and depth that enhanced the emotional impact. Jerry brought in a graphic designer to create demo artwork, and they debated album titles before settling on Weathered Roads, the name of Tyler's strongest original. Finally, on a Friday afternoon 5 weeks after that first recording session, they gathered in the studio to listen to the completed demo from start to finish. Tyler sat between George and Jerry, his mother and sister invited to attend, sitting on the couch with proud expressions. The 4 songs played in sequence. Weathered Roads, opening strong and establishing Tyler's voice and storytelling ability. Second Chances, showing his range and versatility. The Chair, demonstrating his respect for traditional country while making it his own. And The Last Light, closing with devastating emotional power. When the final notes faded, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. Emily was openly sobbing, and Rebecca was holding her daughter, both of them looking at Tyler with overwhelming pride. "That's my son," Rebecca said to no one in particular. "That's my beautiful, talented son." Jerry was the first to speak about business. "We're going to send this to every major label in Nashville. Along with a few independents I think would be a good fit. Tyler, you should start preparing yourself for what comes next. There's going to be interest. A lot of it." "How can you be so sure?" Tyler asked, wanting to believe but afraid to hope too much. George answered, "Because I've been doing this for 45 years, and I know what quality sounds like. This demo is better than many full albums I've heard." "You're ready, Tyler. The question is the industry ready for you?" They didn't have to wait long for an answer. By Monday morning, Jerry's phone was ringing off the hook. He'd sent the demo to 15 labels on Friday afternoon, and by Monday, 12 of them had called expressing interest. 2 wanted to schedule meetings immediately, and 1, MCA Nashville, had already started talking numbers for a potential deal. Tyler felt like he was living in a dream. He attended meetings in glass-windowed offices high above Nashville, shaking hands with executives in expensive suits who praised his talent and talked about marketing strategies and tour possibilities. It was overwhelming and exhilarating and terrifying all at once. George accompanied him to most of these meetings, offering guidance and occasionally asking pointed questions that Tyler wouldn't have known to ask. Jerry negotiated on his behalf, protecting his interests while still being reasonable and professional. After 2 weeks of meetings, they had 3 solid offers on the table. MCA Nashville was offering the largest advance, $250,000, but they wanted significant creative control. Big Machine Records was offering less money, but more artistic freedom. And an independent label called Broken Bow Records was offering something in between, with the added benefit of more personalized attention. Tyler sat with his mother, Emily, George, and Jerry in the studio lounge, the 3 contracts spread out on the table before them. "What do you think?" Tyler asked the room. George spoke first. "I think you need to decide what matters most to you. Do you want the security of a large advance and a major label's resources? Or do you value independence and creative control more?" "I want to make music that matters," Tyler said slowly. "I want to create songs that mean something to people, that help them through hard times like music helped me. I don't want to be manufactured or packaged. I want to be authentic." "Then I think you have your answer," Jerry said, pointing to the Broken Bow contract. "They're small enough that you'll be a priority, not just another artist on a roster of hundreds. They have a good track record with developing talent. And this clause here," he tapped the paper, "gives you creative approval over your songs, your sound, even your image. That's rare, especially for a new artist." Tyler looked at his mother and sister. "What do you think?" Emily didn't hesitate. "Go with your gut. You've made it this far by staying true to yourself. Don't change that now." Rebecca nodded her agreement. "Your father always said that money isn't worth selling your soul for. Take the deal that lets you be yourself." Tyler took a deep breath and looked at Jerry. "Let's sign with Broken Bow." The contract was finalized 3 days later. Tyler Bennett, former waiter and struggling songwriter, was officially a signed recording artist. The news spread quickly through Nashville's tight-knit music community, and suddenly Tyler found himself being recognized in coffee shops and on the street. The local paper ran a feature story about him, the same journalist, Michael Patterson, who had approached him at the harvest table. The article was titled, "From Serving Tables to Signing Contracts: How George Strait Discovered Nashville's Next Star." With his advance money, Tyler was able to secure his family's financial future. He paid off all their outstanding debts, set up a college fund for Emily that would cover her full tuition at Vanderbilt, where she'd been accepted, and made sure his mother had the best medical care available. He moved them out of their small apartment and into a modest but comfortable house in a safe neighborhood, with a yard and space for everyone to breathe. But Tyler himself stayed humble, choosing to live simply and save most of his money. He'd seen too many stories of artists who got their first big paycheck and blew it all on luxury items, only to end up broke when the music stopped. He wasn't going to make that mistake. Recording sessions for his full debut album began in early spring, 6 months after that fateful night at the harvest table. George wasn't producing the full album, but he consulted frequently and even sang a duet with Tyler on a song called "Passing It On," about mentorship and legacy. Working with George Strait on a recorded track was surreal, and Tyler had to keep reminding himself it was real. The album would include the 4 demo tracks plus 8 new songs, some that Tyler had written, and some by Nashville's top songwriters who were eager to have him record their material. The label wanted to release "Weathered Roads" as the first single, and radio stations were already expressing interest based on early listens. One evening, as Tyler was leaving the studio after a particularly productive recording session, his phone rang. The caller ID showed the harvest table. "Hello? Tyler, it's James. Listen, I know you're busy being a big-shot recording artist now, but I wanted to invite you to something. Jennifer is having a birthday party this weekend here at the restaurant after hours. She'd love to see you if you can make it." Tyler smiled, grateful that his old friends hadn't forgotten him despite his changed circumstances. "I'll be there, James. I wouldn't miss it." Saturday night, Tyler walked into the harvest table for the first time since he'd quit. The restaurant was closed to the public, but filled with staff members, past and present, all celebrating Jennifer's 36th birthday. The moment he walked in, everyone erupted in cheers and applause. Jennifer rushed over and hugged him tightly. "Look at you, Mr. Recording Artist. Too fancy for us regular folks now?" "Never," Tyler said sincerely. "You guys are the ones who supported me when I had nothing. I'll never forget that." They spent the evening eating James's specially prepared food, sharing stories and laughter. Tyler brought his guitar at James's request and played a few songs, including Weathered Roads, which had everyone in tears. But mostly, he just enjoyed being with the people who had known him before any of this happened, who liked him for who he was, rather than what he was becoming. As the party wound down, David Chen, the manager, pulled Tyler aside. "I have something to show you." He led Tyler to the wall near the kitchen, where a new photograph had been added to the restaurant's collection. It was a picture of Tyler from that Monday night 6 months ago, taken by a security camera, showing him clearing dishes while singing, completely unaware that George Strait was watching from table 7. Beneath the photo was a small plaque that read, "Tyler Bennett. Served tables here 2023-2024. Proof that dreams don't have expiration dates." Tyler felt his eyes water. "David, this is incredible. Thank you. You represent something important, Tyler. You represent the possibility that it's never too late, that sacrifice doesn't have to mean giving up forever, and that sometimes the universe puts the right people in the right place at the right time. Every server who works here now is going to see this photo and remember that their current circumstances don't define their future." 3 months later, Weathered Roads was released to country radio. The response was immediate and overwhelming. The song debuted at number 42 on the Billboard Country Airplay chart, an exceptional position for a debut single from an unknown artist. By the second week, it had jumped to number 28. By the fourth week, it was in the top 10. Tyler did radio interviews, morning show appearances, and short performances at country music venues around the Southeast. Everywhere he went, people responded to his authenticity, his story, and most importantly, his music. He wasn't manufactured or polished to the point of being generic. He was real, and in an industry that sometimes prized image over substance, that realness was refreshing. The label planned to release his full album in the fall, timed to coincide with the CMA Awards season. There was already talk of him being nominated for New Artist of the Year, though Tyler tried not to think about it too much, afraid of jinxing himself. One afternoon in late summer, Tyler received a phone call that made his heart stop. "Tyler, it's Jerry. I've got some news. The Grand Ole Opry wants to know if you would be interested in performing there next month." The Grand Ole Opry, the most sacred stage in country music, where legends had been made and history had been written. Every major country star had played the Opry, and being invited to perform there was both an honor and a rite of passage. "Are you serious?" Tyler managed to ask. "Dead serious. They've been following your career, and they think you're ready. George may have also put in a good word." Jerry chuckled. "So what do you say? Want to play the Ryman?" "Yes. Absolutely yes." The weeks leading up to the Opry performance were a blur of preparation and increasing nervousness. Tyler would be performing 3 songs during his segment, including Weathered Roads, and he wanted everything to be perfect. He rehearsed constantly, worked with a vocal coach to ensure his voice was in top condition, and consulted with George about stage presence and connecting with a live audience. The night of the performance, Tyler stood backstage at the Ryman Auditorium, the historic building that had housed the Grand Ole Opry for decades before it moved to a larger venue. For special occasions, though, the Opry still returned to the Ryman. And tonight was one of those nights. His mother and Emily were in the audience, along with Jerry, the folks from Broken Bow Records, and his friends from the Harvest Table who had taken a party bus to the show. George Strait was there too, having flown in specifically to watch Tyler perform. As Tyler waited in the wings for his introduction, He felt a hand on his shoulder. He turned to find George standing there, smiling. "You nervous?" George asked. "Terrified." "Good. That means you care. That means it matters." George's expression turned serious. "Tyler, I want you to remember something tonight. You belong here. Not because of luck, not because someone gave you a handout, but because you have genuine talent, and you've worked for this. When you walk out on that stage, you stand on the shoulders of every country artist who came before you. Every story that's been told. Every emotion that's been sung. You're part of that lineage now. Honor it." The announcer's voice boomed through the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage, making his Grand Ole Opry debut, Tyler Bennett." Tyler walked out onto the most famous stage in country music, and the applause washed over him like a wave. He could see faces in the crowd, hundreds of them, all turned toward him expectantly. He could see his family in the third row, his mother crying happy tears, Emily on her feet cheering louder than anyone. He stepped up to the microphone, adjusted his guitar, and spoke to the audience. "Thank you all so much for being here tonight. 6 months ago, I was a waiter at a restaurant, thinking my dreams of making music were over. Then George Strait walked into that restaurant, heard me singing while I worked, and changed my life. This first song I'm going to sing for you is called Weathered Roads, and it's about my father, who taught me that no dream is too big and no obstacle is insurmountable if you're willing to work for it." He began to play, and from the first note, he knew it was going to be magical. His voice filled the historic venue, strong and clear and full of emotion. The audience was completely silent, hanging on every word, and he could feel the connection forming between performer and listener, that intangible thing that separated good performances from great ones. When he finished the song, the applause was thunderous. People were on their feet, cheering and whistling. Tyler had to wipe tears from his eyes before he could continue. He performed Second Chances next. And then, for his final song, he did something unplanned. He'd been scheduled to sing The Chair, his cover of George's classic. But standing there on that stage, feeling the weight of the moment and the support of everyone who had helped him get there, he felt moved to do something different. "I'd like to dedicate this last song to George Strait," Tyler said into the microphone. "George, you gave me a chance when you didn't have to. You believed in me when I'd stopped believing in myself. You taught me that being a musician isn't just about talent. It's about integrity and authenticity and never forgetting where you come from." This song is called The Last Light, and it's the most personal thing I've ever written. I'm singing it tonight because you taught me that vulnerability isn't weakness. It's strength. He sang The Last Light with everything he had, pouring every ounce of emotion into each word. By the second verse, he could see people in the audience crying, holding hands, remembering their own losses and griefs. Music's greatest power, he realized in that moment, was its ability to make people feel less alone. When the final note faded away, there was a moment of profound silence. Then the entire Ryman Auditorium erupted. People were on their feet, applauding and crying and cheering. The ovation went on for nearly 5 minutes, and Tyler stood there overwhelmed, trying to take it all in. As he walked off stage, George was waiting in the wings. Without a word, the legendary singer pulled Tyler into a hug. "Your father would be so proud," George said quietly. "I'm proud. You've arrived, Tyler. You're exactly where you're supposed to be." That night, video clips of Tyler's Opry performance went viral on social media. The Last Light, in particular, resonated deeply, with millions of views and thousands of comments from people sharing their own stories of loss and healing. The song, which hadn't even been released as a single yet, shot up the iTunes charts overnight, reaching #1 on the country downloads chart by morning. The label quickly moved up the release schedule for Tyler's full album, capitalizing on the momentum from his Opry performance. Tyler Bennett, Weathered Roads, was released 2 weeks later, and it debuted at #3 on the Billboard Country Albums chart, an extraordinary achievement for a debut artist. The album's success brought more opportunities. Tyler was invited to perform at the CMA Awards, opened for several major artists on their tours, and was indeed nominated for New Artist of the Year. He didn't win. A female artist with an even more compelling story took that honor. But just being nominated was validating beyond measure. As fall turned to winter, Tyler found himself reflecting on the incredible journey of the past year. He'd gone from serving tables and thinking his dreams were dead to being a successful recording artist with a hit album and a growing fan base. But more than that, he'd rediscovered himself, remembered who he was beneath the grief and responsibility. One December evening, Tyler returned to the Harvest table for dinner, this time as a customer rather than an employee. He'd called ahead and requested table 7 specifically. The restaurant was decorated for Christmas, twinkling lights and garland creating a warm, festive atmosphere. He sat in the same seat where George Strait had sat that life-changing Monday night, and he ordered the same meal. When his food arrived, delivered by a new young waiter who clearly recognized him and was starstruck, Tyler smiled kindly and engaged him in conversation. "What's your story?" Tyler asked. "What are you doing besides waiting tables?" The young man, whose name was Daniel, blushed. "I'm trying to make it as a songwriter, actually. But it's hard to get anyone to listen to your stuff when you're a nobody." Tyler reached into his wallet and pulled out a business card, one that had his contact information and the logo of his management company. "Send me some of your songs. I can't promise anything, but I'm always looking for good material, and I like to help people who are where I was not too long ago." Daniel took the card with shaking hands. "Thank you so much, Mr. Bennett. You have no idea what this means." "Actually, I do. Someone gave me a chance when I needed it most. I'm just passing it on." As Tyler ate his dinner, he thought about how much had changed and how much had stayed the same. He was still the same person, fundamentally, still driven by the same values his father had instilled in him. But he'd been given a second chance, an opportunity to pursue his dreams while still taking care of his family. His mother's health had improved dramatically with proper treatment and therapy. Emily was thriving at Vanderbilt, her tuition fully covered, studying medicine with the goal of helping people the way she wished someone could have helped their father. And Tyler himself was making music that mattered, touching lives and telling stories that needed to be told. As he prepared to leave the restaurant, James came out of the kitchen to greet him. "How was everything?" "Perfect, as always." Tyler stood and shook the chef's hand. "Thank you, James, for everything you did for me when I worked here, for all the advice and support. You earned every bit of it, kid. We're all proud of you." James paused, then added, "Your dad would be proud too. You honored his memory by not giving up, by taking the chance when it came." Tyler felt the familiar sting of tears, but blinked them back. "I think about him every day. Every time I walk on stage, every time I sing, I feel like he's there with me somehow. He is. That's what love does. It transcends everything, even death." As Tyler walked out into the cold December night, snowflakes beginning to fall on the Nashville streets, he felt a deep sense of peace and gratitude. His journey wasn't over. In many ways, it was just beginning. There would be more albums to record, more songs to write, more stories to tell. There would be challenges and setbacks, moments of doubt and difficulty, but he would face them all with the courage his father had taught him, the support of his family and friends, and the knowledge that sometimes, when you're brave enough to hope again, when you're willing to take a chance on yourself, the universe conspires to help you succeed. Tyler Bennett had gone from serving tables to selling records, from giving up his dreams to living them fully. And it all started with a moment of unconscious singing, an attentive ear, and the generosity of a legend who recognized something special and chose to nurture it. As he drove home through the snowy streets, past the neon lights of Broadway and the countless venues where aspiring musicians were playing for sparse crowds, Tyler whispered a promise to himself and to his father's memory. "I'll never forget where I came from. I'll never stop being grateful. And I'll never stop using my voice to lift up others the way I was lifted up." The road ahead was weathered but beautiful, uncertain but full of possibility. And Tyler Bennett was ready to travel it, one song at a time.